All theology is contextual. They emerge out of a historical, cultural context. No theology just floats around in the ether without context. Black theology, womanist theology, white theology, whatever theology we're talking about, emerge from a social context. White theology is no different. White theology emerged out of a social context during the European Age of Enlightenment back in the 16th, 17th, and 18th and 19th centuries, when Europeans were trying to work out a theology to justify white supremacy. They had been going around the world dominating people of color, going into their lands, enslaving their people, taking their natural resources, and treating them just like they were inhuman. And yet they would go back to Europe and view themselves as pure and holy and close to God and the best thing God has ever created. And yet, on the other hand, they were going to North, North America, they were going to Africa, they were going to Australia, and they were dominating, pillaging, killing, raping, and just taking and stealing everything they could. And yet they saw themselves as these morally upright, justice loving, wonderful people. So there was a cognitive dissonance that their self perception was contradicted by their behavior. And the way to resolve a cognitive dissonance is, number one, stop doing what you're doing. If you call yourself holy and pure and close to God, peace and justice, you can't treat people of color the way you were treating them and still maintain your self-perception. So you either, number one, have to change your behavior. Stop treating people of color the way you're treating them. Well, they weren't going to do that because they were making too much money doing it and they were amassing too much power doing it. So you can forget that. They weren't going to stop doing that. Or the second thing is you can stop perceiving yourself as these wonderful, nice, holy people. They weren't going to stop doing that either. They were saying, we are holy, we are pure, we are next to God, we love justice, and we're going to continue to dominate these people. So what is the third option? It is to create a hierarchy of humanity. That is, this is where the whole idea of racism comes into play. So now you create a chain of being, placing whiteness at the top. And as that chain or hierarchy descends, the darker the people become and the less human they become. So what they did is they created this hierarchy that we call racist or racism, putting white people at the top and black people at the bottom, where whiteness was the center or the model of humanity, and blackness was at the bottom, and it was the model of what it means to be less than human. So if you're less than human, Brother Colbert, I can treat you less than human and still maintain my self perception as a good, holy, moral, honest, decent person. And yet I can treat you inhumanely because I've created this social construction that says you are less than human. So when I pillage your land, when I rape your people, when I enslave your people, I don't see that as enslaving other human beings because you're not human. You're less than human. So they developed a theology to justify that type of behavior, to justify their domination. So when I talk about white theology, I'm talking about a theological construction that is supposed to be rooted in the Bible, but they remove the prophetic and the justice themes of the Bible because those prophetic and justice themes in the Bible contradict their theological construction that put the people that they don't like at the bottom and justify their domination. So that's what white theology is. Here's the problem, that when they brought our people from West Africa to the Americas to enslave them, the idea was that our forebears did not know God. And that couldn't be further from the truth. We knew God. We had God. We understood God. We had a relationship with God. But when they brought us to the America, they imposed upon our forebears this bastardized version of Christianity that was infused and rooted in white evangelicalism. So they hammered us with that, but some of our forebears fooled around and learned how to read for themselves. And they got a hold of that Bible and started reading it and said, this is inconsistent with what white people are doing to us and what they are saying to us about this book and about the God that's revealed in this book. And so you had people who understood the biblical text. And from that biblical text, they began to form their own theologies from their social construction. Whether you're looking at Harriet Tubman, who saw herself as a prophet from God based upon her understanding of that Bible. She saw herself being used by God to resist domination and to lead people to freedom. You got Frederick Douglass, who read that Bible and saw the contradiction that white clergy and white theology had infused in that Bible. You saw Nat Turner, who had the same Bible and saw himself as a prophet from God and saw his attack and resistance against the slavocracy as ordained and empowered by God. You got Denmark Vesey. Denmark Vesey was a conspirator, and he built this elaborate conspiracy against slavery in Virginia. And Denmark Vesey saw himself as being used by God. I think it was Denmark who had Samson as his hero. And so he allowed his hair to grow long, locks and all of that. And he literally saw himself moved and empowered by God to resist domination and to resist oppression. That's Black theology because it emerged from a Black context. Here is what happened, though. You had white clergy and white theologians to diffuse the biblical message of its prophetic edge and infuse it with a soft white evangelicalism that said the way to being Christian is to allow people to dominate you and wait for God himself to come in and deliver you. But you are not to take any initiative to push back against your dominators. Don't take any initiative to push back against your oppressors. And so many of us adopted that white theology and abandoned the Black theology that emerged during the slavery period.